Good afternoon, folks. I was debating whether to do a live stream and bring this data into the mix. However, I've had a second thought on that, and that is, it's a sensitive issue, and mistakes made in a live stream could perhaps undo the essence of the message I'm trying to portray in this video. So I've decided to make it as a video instead, of course, then, because I can edit if I make any mistakes, and then we can get this so that it flows and so that people can recognize the spirit of what it is I'm trying to show. Now, what's prompted this is a video that's doing the circle of a young Muslim chap in Birmingham bigging up the Ummah army, or Muslim army, on England, okay, and is invoking Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Pakistan, etc. as this Ummah army, and makes a claim that they outnumber the Zionist army by something like 1.5 million. Okay. Just before we enter that video, what I want to just point out to people is this. You know, this idea of Zionism, when it's mentioned, people automatically think, oh, Israel. And then they hear the term Islam, oh, Muslims. Not us. Yeah. Not the white honky, not the black man, yeah, not the Western man. But that's a complete nonsense today, okay? Let's just get this into perspective, shall we? Because we're going to visit the Three World War strategy as laid out by Albert Pike, the Supreme Pontiff of Scottish Rite Freemasonry from the 1800s, a hero of the American Civil War, on the losing side. Anyway, doesn't matter. The essence of what he's put forward then in the 1800s ties in with the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, which weren't ruled nonsense in a court, they were ruled a forgery. And a forgery, of course, when you understand formal English and not think you're understanding what's being said because you understand slang, or legal English, which can mean whatever they want it to mean at any particular time, formal English is clear. A forgery is a copy of an original. So they were ruled a copy of an original document and plan. And if you want to further the evidence of the protocols as being real, study the 20th century and the first 21 years so far being experienced as we cross the millennium. There it is, the blueprint, and it's been carried out. We don't need to debate that matter any further in this video. So basically, Albert Pike for the Third World War is very clear that the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. This war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on the issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual and economical exhaustion. Well, that's already happened in the wars that we've had since 2001. The Western militaries have pretty much exhausted itself, while the bankers' other and chosen bloc to move forward from this is Russia, China, the East. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists. We shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm that is underway right now, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effects of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery, and the most bloody turmoil. The multitude disillusioned with Christianity will receive the true light through the universal Jesuit Vatican II system that I've included, because I've taken this from reports I've done, so we'll bracket that. Jesuit Vatican II system, that's my input. Manifestation of pure doctrine of Lucifer. So they're going to bring you the light, or they'll have you ready to receive the light as a manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer. Okay, this is Albert Pike. Brought finally out in the public view. Okay. Alright. Or, if we go back to Madame Blavatsky of the Theosophists, it's what they classed as the externalization of the hierarchy. So the externalization in the public of what's always been going on in the private, which is again we are seeing. This will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and examined or exterminated at the same time. Now, the mistake that this young Muslim in Birmingham is making is that he believes that the Muslim army of Ummah outnumbers the Zionist army by some 1.5 million, which is not a lot. Anyway, so obviously he has no idea or concept of how military operations operate today. It's not about manpower. It's about technology. So it doesn't matter whether you outnumber your idea of the Zionists by 1.5 million, that's fine. But I would suggest this young Muslim is believing, as most do, that the utterance of the term Zionism means Israel. Alright? You see, the Zionist creed or political agenda has been thrust into everything. Vatican II in the Church of Rome, Freemasonry into the Church of England, and obviously into the Vatican it was through the Jesuits. Alright? So this idea of Zionism being only Israel is nonsense. It's now the entire raft of evangelical Christianity, including the Jehovah's Witnesses, including the Mormons, the Church of England, and the Church of Rome since the implementation of Vatican II. So Zionism, when they're speaking of it in this Third World War strategy, isn't just a case of letting Israel and the Muslims have it in the Middle East. Also bear in mind that in the last 100 years, they have brought in Muslims into the West. Okay. So as we enter this time of judgment, a time whereby every man as an individual has to reckon with what it is he's believed and operated for his entire life, we're being given the opportunity to reconsider our errors. Because many mistakes have been made off those errors, and as we reach this finale, the mistakes from those errors are going to turn into a bloodbath if we are not reckoning with our own standing today and what we believe rather than what we know. So whereby this final reckoning would, if as it should be, Muslims in Muslim countries, Christians in Christian countries, Jews in a Jewish country, then this reckoning will be dealt with by each individual country based on their own formats, their own theology, their own religious rules. And would have, same for Christians, same for Jews, which would have made this time a lot easier. As it stands, the mix on now, because you have to understand, you're seeing Jews as you see Freemasons. Freemasonry is a Jewish organisation and it operates for the Jews. Simple as that. So this mix now is so ingrained in the West that as this reckoning comes about, it's going to be made far more difficult by the fact that you're not just dealing with, as you come to terms with your own nonsense and now you're off track from your own book, isn't as simple as sort of going over your own doctrines, etc., because you've got 3 mixes on all lands now, and you've got 3 mixes, 3 religions throwing in their own this, that, the other across the whole thing. That's a problem. It's been created so on the back of the ignorance of all respective religions. It's not just, you can't just sit here now and blame one. If you do, you're never going to get to the core of the issue and the problem and problems that are going to arise in the future.
Today, here, we are Muslim youth in Birmingham, Small Heath. But trust me when I say this, that many more share this sentiment around city, around the country, around the globe, in every corner of the globe. And this is what our army needs us. Raise your voices and use your channels to get the message across to them. Until the prevalent opinion among the Muslim armies is to liberate Al-Aqsa. Muslim armies move! 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 We need to change the corrupt secular governments that prevent us from doing this. For too long, each Muslim country has convinced us, its own people and soldiers, that we cannot do anything. We are powerless, and that the only good we can do is if the West is on our side. But when you talk about ending disunity between Muslims, dissolving the nation states, and becoming unified again, these same governments are the first ones to shut you up. These same governments are the first ones to imprison you. These same governments are the first ones to call you extremists and to stop you by any means. Takbir! Allah! The Ummah's armies in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt eclipsed the Zionist army by 1.73 million. Press these traitors and we are with you. You are not alone. We, the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, are with you. Use the hashtag Al-Aqsa Call Armies. Inshallah. Al-Aqsa called the armies. Liberate Al-Quds. Call for Khilafah. This is me directly talking to those in the armies who are sincere. Get this to them, inshallah. Seek your honor through Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will honor you. Act for the Ummah and secure your akhirah. Be like Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, who was the military leader who led the liberation of Palestine before, from the hands of the Crusaders, and he is remembered 100 years on. And we name our kids after him, and we teach them his stories. So what are you waiting for? Liberate Al-Quds and call for Khilafah. Takbir! Allahu Akbar!
If we go to Quran, the Quran is very clear. Okay, the Prophet says, seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. Seeking knowledge. Now that's knowledge of the earth, not just of what Imam tells you have to look at for knowledge. You have to look at the whole thing. Because if you don't, you're not going to have the grammar you need in order to reckon with yourself at this time now as to whether you are on track or off the mark. And as I just explained, the fact that all three religions are mixed together now on all lands, you've got three sets of rules baying for absolutism. When, if it was back to nations, then whichever nation you find yourself in, you would have to operate according to the laws of that nation. Because you find yourself in there. Why do I say that? Well, very clear. Let's look at the words of a Muslim scholar. And he says, we have to abide, and this is a Muslim scholar, we have to abide by the law of the place where we live. We are not committed to obey any law contradictory to Islam, but you cannot live in a society without complying with its rules and laws. You will be forced to follow those laws. If you want to disobey the laws of that society, you will make yourself liable to penalties and punishments. That liability is against Islam. So basically what he's saying is, as individuals, if you're operating contrary to Islam, you're creating a liability for Islam as a whole. And I've discussed these issues in previous videos. It's all right believing you're correct, but if you're actually not correct, then you're not correct in the physical reality of things. And so claiming to be a Muslim when you're not operating according to the book is a reality. The fact that you don't want to reckon with that is on you, and you're going to make a serious mistake. You're going to join this path that's going to lead to blood being spilled. So what I would suggest is this. By obeying the Quran, that you must abide by the laws of your host nation, then you had better start to reckon with the fact that you've not sought the knowledge, as is an obligation on every Muslim, because you believe that operating to government is the law of the nation on England, and it's not. On England, the laws are built around a realm, and they're called the common law, okay? Because in essence, they're built on common sense. And that gives the arena to do battle, which would otherwise be bloody, in an arena of debate, with the arbiter being the law, not opinion, not beliefs, not fanatical expressions of what it is you believe as an individual is your right. When you come onto another land, the rights are afforded by the law, not government administration law, which is what's running around here today, because you're on person. So if you're a Muslim and you've come over here, straight away you're on person. You're off biblical. So you can't then claim to be of the Ten Commandments and a follow-through or the last idea from biblical commandments. You can't. You're off. You're off that. You're nothing to do with the Bible. So you claim to be a Muslim and part of biblical. You're not. That's the reality of it. The priesthood knows this is why it's put everybody in this position. So on England, if you wanted to be blocked, i.e. Muslim, and you wanted to move against what you can clearly see as nonsense in all this nonsense that's going on, that's one thing. But calling in a Muslim army, which is contrary to English law, which puts you into subversion, sedition and treason, and then you can be dealt with by the laws of the nation that you're supposed to be abiding, which you'd know about if you'd sought the knowledge, will work against you. You'll face liabilities and penalties. But as this scholar says, in so doing, you're bringing that liability against Islam as a whole for your individual stupidity. Now, this pans out in every nation, everywhere in the world, because every nation is built on its own laws. They might not be classed as common law, but they're the laws held as common knowledge amongst your population. So whichever nation you find yourself in, what you better actually do in seeking that knowledge is seek out the laws of the land on which you find yourself, because that is the biblical method of coming to terms with these final times that we're in and operating correctly, so that instead of going against the grain of the land you're on, you actually you are invoking that system. And you cannot find yourself in any better place than England or America if you want the best format in which you can apply that system and allow the laws of the nation to arbitrate, which is exactly what the Quran teaches Muslims. Now, I'm talking about Islam at the moment because we are basing this on this video that this young chap has put out. Now, so what I'm saying is double-edged, this kind of language. You cannot be on another land and start throwing around this idea that there's a Muslim army because you're in treason, sedition, subversion immediately. That is the reality. If you're trying to formulate your cultural heritage and people that operate to that, to start to invoke the laws of England in order to help the English, the natives of this land. And when I say natives, yes, we're speaking of born on, but we're also speaking more importantly of people, man that has understood that there are laws on the land he's born, and those are the only laws that have to be abided by. And this is on person. Because English common law is about person. Biblical law is about man, but off that, you're on person. And, you're going to fail to grasp the grammar required to put yourself back on biblical man because you're so far off it. However, the reality is you find yourself on England, you are a person because you're operating on title, a trust. And you are, under administration law, government pushing, you are a slave. Under English common law, you have rights. You have privileges. And you have unalienable rights, which can't be altered, changed, etc., that protect you. On person. This is still on person, remember. And then all of you are on person. And I just think it'd be far simpler for you to reckon with what is on person that actually works for you. And that is to be a citizen or subject to the English realm. And they speak for themselves. You don't need to ask other people what they mean. You read them and study them and they tell you what they mean. But you have to learn how to use it and invoke it properly so that it does protect you. So there's your Third World War strategy, and this is why I've pulled this in. It's because we're coming to times of reckoning, and you can't start talking nonsense like that on the streets of another nation by calling in some foreign army, because it's sedition. You're not doing yourself any favours, and you're putting a liability on Islam by your own ignorance. Because the media, the corporate state, will allow that stuff to go on because it wants to heighten up this tension between, as it states in Third World War strategy, that the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world against each other. And as I've just explained, it's not just the Zionists, it's not just Israel, it's Freemasonry. It's everything that Freemasonry has its paws into. It's the Prussian-controlled Jesuits, which is the Jesuits with the conversos having administrative power in it, which was seen in the 1700s, and they were thrown out to the Vatican. You really need to start getting a grip on this situation before it becomes its own power. You've got to see this in these terms, people, or you're going to fall foul of the division that's already been set up, and in that division, an attempt to prevent man from coming to terms with where we're at, the actual reality of it, and what we don't do if we want to come to undo it and remove the power that the priesthood has over all the religions. Because in Islam, it's created a Sharia that's contrary to the Quran. What it is in sync, and this contrary is in sync with the Noahide, because the Noahide is the ultimate goal. What they've done by shifting Muslims off the Quran into this facade of a Sharia that supports the Euro-Garages trio, all this nonsense that's going up, Rothschild fronted. It's there to drag you into that, because that's then you're controlled completely. And your pull to that is money, your mammon. We don't need to go into that in great detail as well. Look, I'm talking to man, male or female. I'm not talking to children. If you don't get what I'm saying and understand the essence of it, you're still a child, you're not a man. Alright? You need to understand that. So I'm here speaking to man. If you understand what I'm saying, this is the path we need to move on. We need to invoke the laws of the lands that we're on as arbitrator to the predicaments we find ourselves in, that are promulgated, and a creation of the priesthood that ultimately controls everything today, because of the ignorance that's floating around here today, the fanaticism that's running riot without any foundation in reality, i.e. doctrinal reality. So I'll keep this short because we can go on forever pulling things apart, etc. It's not the aim of this game. It's just let's just look at the oversoul that we're all under and look at it in how do we attack this in order to bring it all that's going to come, instead of moving into this madness which the priesthood requires and has been planned since the 1800s, so that we can use our minds, our spiritual selves, to subvert the priesthood's agenda by operating correctly in accordance with the Ten Commandments, the only laws put in the box, and each individual religion that bases itself on those original laws. Okay. And with that, I will say, till the next time.